Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker, a time of plagues, punishments, and pottage. You're about to wake up in a world without electricity, without privacy, and spoiler alert, without toilet paper. This is not your average knight in shining armor fantasy. No dragons here, just actual fleas. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive the day. But don't worry, we'll make it gentle, a little bit funny, and very, very sleepy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in 1325. Your back hurts. You're 22 years old, which in medieval terms places you comfortably in midlife. The straw mattress beneath you smells like it died last week, which makes sense because it used to be a barn floor. You're wrapped in a wool blanket that hasn't been washed since the last good harvest, which, according to your memory, was sometime around the last solar eclipse. That blanket now weighs about as much as a goat from absorbing every sneeze storm. And still, you've encountered Dot as you shift. Your spine creaks like an old door someone forgot to oil. You're not alone in your bed. In fact, your bed isn't really your bed. It's a communal tangle of elbows, livestock, and dreams half remembered through a haze of hay fever and collective body odor. There's your little brother curled. Beside you, the neighbor's daughter on the other end. And yes, that snoring lump in the corner, that's a chicken. Privacy isn't a thing yet. There are no rooms, no curtains, no boundaries. Just people and animals all breathing the same fermented air, sharing the same dirt floor, and hoping tonight the rats go somewhere else. You blink, and the light leaking through the thatch above you is gray and soggy. There's a slow drip from the roof that lands with unsettling accuracy right between your eyebrows. You try to sit up but hesitate. The air is sharp and cold and cuts at your skin like an unkind whisper. You stretch and regret it instantly as your joints pop like someone rolling dice in your knees. Then you hear it, the clang of the church bell, your alarm clock. Only it's made of iron and disappointment. It echoes across the damp fields, louder than you need it to be. Historians still argue whether people in medieval villages actually liked these bells or simply tolerated them. Under threat of eternal damnation, you breathe in through your nose. That was a mistake. The scent is layered. A blend of old beer, warm goat, damp moss, and a note of please don't ask questions. Scented candles won't be invented for another few centuries. Even if they were, they'd melt on your floor, which is mostly dirt, partially mold, and entirely questionable. Your hair is matted. Your scalp itches. You reach to scratch behind your ear and pull back what you dearly hope is just a flea. It probably is. Everyone has them. It's not a scandal. In fact, it's practically fashion. One of the chickens flaps her wings as you move. You make eye contact. She's lived here longer than you. She's seen things. You finally roll out of bed, and your feet touch the floor wet. again. Either last night's storm leaked through the ceiling, or someone's bucket missed its mark. Either way, the cold squelch between your toes is confirmation. You're officially awake, and also slightly composted. A spider wanders casually across your tunic, which you slept in and will also wear all day. You give it a nod. You don't have the energy to evict anyone else from your ecosystem this morning. Outside your hut, the fog hugs the fields. Somewhere, a rooster crows, then stops abruptly, probably a fox. The day is starting. The chores await, and already your knees are regretting. Yesterday dot, so here you are. Not quite a peasant, not quite dead, just existing in 1325, breathing the shared air, ducking the drips, scratching the familiar itch, and wondering what it might be like to sleep alone in a room with a door. But that's dreaming above your station. You've got a long day ahead of you. And first, before the field work, before the livestock, before you're reminded that cheese is a luxury, you'll need to answer the call of nature. And that, well, that's not going to be pretty. You shuffle across the dirt floor, trying not to wake the others, though the piglet nosing around the fireplace has already decided it's morning. The air is sharp and smells like cold ashes and wet wool. You slip through the creaky wooden door into the gray light, where morning is less sunrise and more slow regret. Nature calls, loudly, and in medieval Europe, nature doesn't knock it, barges in and yells. There's no bathroom, no running water, no toilet paper folded into little triangles, not even a mildly resentful plunger standing in the corner like in modern life. Your options are limited. If you're in a village, your toilet is a shared wooden bucket behind the house. A bucket you definitely don't want to look into too closely. You hesitate. Not out of modesty, no such luxury, but because Uncle Willem had a bad stew yesterday, and the bucket hasn't been emptied since. The smell biblical, somewhere between forgotten cabbage and sorrow. You pinch your nose and do what you must. Then, with a small sigh of existential resignation, you toss the contents into the street. Yes, the street. Right out the window. But first you're supposed to shout, Garde-Lou, Old French for watch out below. No one listens. No one moves. A splash, a curse, and another mark on your invisible list of daily humiliations. Because in medieval towns, the streets are the sewers. A river of human waste, animal droppings, and various unidentifiable fluids slinks its way between homes like a really determined soup. And while historians still argue whether cities had proper sanitation systems, they all agree on one thing. Nobody wanted to be downhill. If you're lucky, and let's admit, you're not, you might live in a town with public latrines. Sounds better, right? Until you realize it's just a row of holes in a bench, shoulder to shoulder, with the local smith and that guy who always chews loudly. Privacy? A myth? Ventilation? A cruel joke. You make eye contact once. You never recover. Toilet paper, of course, does not exist. People wipe with whatever is within reach and feels vaguely absorbent. Straw, moss, scraps of cloth, a handful of leaves that might not be poisonous. Sometimes nothing at all. which probably explains why handshakes won't catch on for another few centuries. And don't get too excited about nobility having it better. In castles, your bathroom might be a garderobe simple hole in the wall that empties straight into the moat below. Elegant, right? Except moats aren't just decorative puddles. They're part of the plumbing system. And yes, enemies have been known to climb into castles through them. Surprise, your toilet is also a security risk. You try not to think about it too much as you wash your hands. Well, wash is generous. You splash water from a wooden basin and rub briskly, hoping friction cancels out the bacteria. Spoiler, it doesn't. But back then, no one really knew about germs. The word hygiene doesn't exist yet. And if someone smells bad, it's just Thursday dot. As you turn to head back inside, you glance at the chicken, watching you from the windowsill. She looks judgmental. Or maybe she's just tired of the smell to dot behind the house. A neighbor is already pouring another bucket out. The window with no warning. You duck just in time. Welcome to the morning gauntlet, where survival depends on footwork and a bit of blind luck. And yet, despite it all, people just accept this. There's no other way. No pipes, no porcelain. Just buckets, ditches, and the occasional patch of scrubby grass with suspiciously flat spots. You get used to it. Or you move to the countryside and pray the wind's in your favor. The world around you has no clean edges. No sparkling sinks or minty fresh cleansers. Just stone, mud, and a lot of good enough. And maybe that's comforting in its own strange way. Nobody expects perfection. Just participation. By now, your hands are numb from the cold water. You rub them together, flex your fingers, and breathe into your palms for a little warmth. Your joints crack again. Not in a painful way, just in a yes, you are aging on schedule kind of way. A soft breeze rolls through the yard, carrying the scent of wood smoke, damp leaves, and faintly someone else's failed digestion. You sigh. Another day has begun. The door creaks as you step back inside. The fire is sputtering. Someone stirring the pottage pot already. You nod a greeting to the old man hunched in the corner, scratching something from his beard that might be breakfast, or might be a philosophical mystery. You survived the bucket. You dodged the street soup, and somehow your dignity remains mostly intact. Well done, but don't celebrate. Just yet. It's time for the next medieval trial, and it comes in a bowl. The kitchen, if it can be called that, is little more than a smoky corner near the hearth, where a pot hangs like a heavy thought above a smoldering log. Breakfast awaits, which sounds promising until you remember what breakfast is. There's no cinnamon, no toast, no pancakes shaped like happy faces. Just a wooden bowl and a substance with the consistency of regret. Pottage. Pottage is not a dish so much as a lifestyle. It's a forever stew, an eternal soup, a bubbling community. Project where yesterday's scraps become today's feature ingredient. Grains, turnips, old beans, maybe the ghost of a carrot. It's all in there. It's been simmering for days, occasionally stirred, rarely questioned. You settle near the fire and accept your portion. The spoon, rough and slightly splintered, dips into the viscous beige. It's warm, and that's about the best you can say for it. There's a texture, sort of. A flavor, technically. You chew, although it's unclear why. The chunks melt slowly, and not in the romantic, chocolate advertisement kind of way. A small child sits across from you gnawing on a hunk of bread that could double as building material. It's made from barley or rye, sometimes bulked up with acorns or, in lean years, sawdust. You chew yours slowly, jaw protesting with every bite. You don't slice this bread, you negotiate with it. You look around. Everyone's chewing. No one's talking. Eyes are fixed somewhere in the middle distance. It's not melancholy. It's just breakfast. Historians still argue whether medieval people considered pottage a delicacy or simply the absence of starvation. Most agree it was nutritionally adequate, but emotionally vacant. Beside your bowl sits a cup. You lift it, hoping for tea, cider, anything with a sparkle of joy. But no, it's beer, and not the exciting kind. This is small beer, weak in alcohol, but strong in survival. Even children drink it, because the water will end you. You sip. It tastes like barley's disappointing cousin. Flat, a little sour, but at least it won't invite intestinal parasites to throw a party in your column. The fire pops. Somewhere behind you, someone sneezes. You can't tell who. It's a small room, and all sounds echo like secrets. You dunk the bread in your pottage, hoping the stew softens it. It doesn't. The bread wins again. There's no meat today. That's normal. Peasants eat meat rarely, maybe a few times a year. Meat is expensive and reserved for feasts, saints' days, and moments when someone else's pig wanders a bit too far from home. Cheese is similarly rare and often pungent enough to be considered self-aware. Fruit? Only when it's in season and not already halfway to wine. Spices? A pinch of pepper could cost more than your rent, if rent were something peasants paid in. Coins instead of sweat. You look into your bowl. Something green floats past, possibly a leaf, possibly a lesson. The child across from you picks a bug off their bread and shrugs. You nod. Happens to the best of us. This is breakfast. It doesn't nourish your soul. It just happens to you, like weather or fleas. And yet, in this quiet moment, surrounded by family, warmth, and an aggressively neutral bowl of stew, there's a strange comfort. Not joy, but something quieter. Continuity. You've had worse. The fire crackles. The pot bubbles. Someone belches gently. You hear a spoon scrape the bottom of a bowl. Soon it will be time to rise, to leave the hut, to labor beneath a sky that doesn't care if you're tired. But not yet. For now you're here, chewing your bread-shaped disappointment and drinking your barley water. Someone passes a sliver of onion around the group. You get a piece the size of a thumbnail. It's the most flavor you've had all week. A tiny burst of sharpness. A reminder that food can still surprise you or sting you. It's a fine line. Your stomach isn't full, but it's less empty. You wipe the spoon on your tunic, what else, and set it back on the shelf near the others. The bowls are stacked, like hopes. Uneven and a little chipped. Outside, the sky brightens. It's not blue, more of a soft gray smear. but it promises a few dry hours. The others are already pulling on their cloaks, ready to head out. You take one last sip of beer. Warm, flat, slightly comforting. Like a hug from someone wearing damp burlap. Your workday waits. But first you must get dressed. And that, as it turns out, is its own medieval adventure. You stand, bones creaking like a haunted windmill, and shuffle toward the corner where your clothes hang. Hang is optimistic. They're draped over a nail, still damp from yesterday's drizzle and forever scented with wood smoke and despair dressing. In the Middle Ages isn't glamorous. There are no closets, no drawers, and certainly no debate about whether today is a hooded cloak or casual linen kind of day. You own exactly one outfit. One. It is your workwear, your sleepwear, your church wear, your wedding wear, and if you're lucky, your eventual burial wear. Your tunic is made of wool rough, scratchy and stiff in all the wrong places. It clings where it shouldn't and sags where it mustn't. The seams lovingly stitched by someone who didn't quite understand what a straight line is, curve in curious directions. You pull it over your head and immediately feel the familiar full body itch set in, like your skin is trying to remember a happier life. Historians still argue whether medieval fabrics were intentionally unpleasant or if comfort simply hadn't been invented yet. You tie your belt a strip of fraying cloth with just enough structure to keep your dignity from falling completely off. Beneath your tunic you might be wearing a linen shift, if you're lucky. If not, it's bare legs and courage all the way down. Underwear is at best a rumor, and brass, you laugh gently to yourself. The kind of laugh that carries centuries of longing. Now the shoes. Ah, the shoes. If you even have any, they sit by the door. Two misshapen bundles of untreated leather that resemble sad oven mitts. They're stiff, cracked, and more emotional support than functional footwear. The soles are thin enough to feel every rock, every thorn, every medieval insult the road has to offer. Arch support, think flatbread, laces, optional. Comfort, not applicable. You slip your feet in and immediately question your life choices, but you wear them anyway because walking barefoot through mud, manure, and mystery puddles isn't how you want to start this Tuesday or Thursday or any day really. Outside, your breath fogs the air. The wool tunic absorbs the chill like a sponge made of sadness. You adjust your hood, a rough scrap of fabric designed less for warmth and more for modesty. Exposed skin is frowned upon, not just for religious reasons, but also because it's an invitation to insects, sunburn, and general judgment from Agnes down the lane. Everyone's getting dressed. The communal dressing experience is less about modesty and more about efficiency. No one's staring. Everyone's scratching. You rub your arms and sigh. The cold bites at your fingertips, which are already rough from yesterday's work. Your tunic smells faintly of onion, sweat, and whatever was in the pottage last week. A living record of your activities. You consider washing your clothes. You really do, but then you remember. Washing means hauling buckets of water from the river, boiling it over a fire, scrubbing with ashes or fermented urine, then wringing out the heavy wet fabric and hanging it up to dry in a sun that may or may not visit this week. So instead, you embrace the patina of medieval living. A little grime, a few stains, and a perfume called Peasant No. 5. Everyone looks like this. Everyone smells like this. You are one of many itchy, slightly damp wool-covered humans navigating a world before laundry detergent and deodorant dot. As you stretch again, a flea jumps ship from your sleeve to your collarbone. You flick it off lazily. It's practically a roommate at this point. Your scalp itches too. That's the lice. They're unavoidable. Nobles have them. Monks have them. Even the guy who claims to bathe twice a year has them. Lice, fleas, and bedbugs all live on you, with you, within you. You are a walking in for the insect kingdom. Some people try remedies, herbs, oils, combs, but mostly everyone just scratches. It's not rude. It's just normal. You scratch your side with a spoon. No one blinks. You glance down at your tunic. A few holes here and there. A patch on the elbow that used to be part of your sister's apron. Every garment is recycled, reused, repurposed. Nothing is wasted, even dignity. The worst part? This is the good outfit. The one you wear when people might see you. You've got a backup, but it's half eaten by rats and smells suspiciously of fermented turnip. You pull on your cloak, thin as it is, and tie it around your shoulders. The wind cuts right through it. You wrap it tighter anyway, pretending. It helps Dot, and now, fully dressed in medieval fashion, meaning half wool, half scratchy riddle, you're ready for the day's labor. Your skin tingles. Your back groans. But at least you're covered. At least you're upright. Dot, at least, for now, you're mobile. And in a world like this, that's already a win. You glance toward the fields, tools waiting like tired friends. But first, maybe a smile to start the day. Except, well, let's talk about those teeth. You take a deep breath, immediately regrettable. Given the aroma of composting onions, wet wool, and something your cousin stepped in last night and stretched your jaw into what might generously be called a smile. But you don't show your teeth. Not because you're modest. Because your teeth? They've seen better centuries. Dental care in the Middle Ages is a bit like dragons, mostly fantasy. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no minty freshness. No floss unless you count bits of straw that get stuck and pulled out by accident. Oral hygiene is a concept reserved for the future and possibly mythical creatures. You rub a finger across your gums. They're sore again, inflamed, tender to the touch. Not unusual, just quietly miserable. You think about chewing something later and wince. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages actually cleaned their teeth with herbs, ashes, or vinegar. But they all agree on one thing. Mouths were war zones. A battlefield of cavities. Swelling and slow rot. The most common cleaning method is chewing on a twig, maybe birch or hazel, until the fibers fray into a makeshift brush. You tried that once. Ended up with splinters in your gums and a look of quiet defeat. Vinegar. Rinse? Feels more like a punishment. Wine? Popular, yes, but mostly for mood rather than hygiene. You remember old Magda from 3 doors down. She once pulled a molar with a heated spoon and a prayer. Survived 2. Mostly, you glance around. Everyone is chewing something, bread, twigs, maybe just the ambient tension, and no one smiles with teeth. Not really. Not unless you want to see a landscape of blackened stubs and yawning cavities. If you're noble, you might get sugar in your diet, which sounds fancy until you realize it's worse for your teeth than pottage ever dreamed of. Rich folks rot their teeth with delicacies. Poor folks grind theirs down with gritty grain and bread baked with stones. Yes, literal stones. Sometimes they sneak into the flour and stay there, waiting to crack a molar like a cruel surprise. You recall last spring when a boy in the next village tried to yank out a bad tooth with twine and a horse. It did not go well. The horse lived. The boy, well, he's quiet now. Toothaches are everywhere. They throb behind the eyes, in the temples, in the silence of night when everything else fades. You don't go to a dentist. Dentists don't exist. You go to a barber, and the barber, in addition to trimming your hair and possibly bleeding you with leeches, will also yank your tooth out with a pair of metal tongs and a complete lack of anesthesia. If you're lucky, he's sober. If not, you both scream. There are no fillings, no root canals, no gum treatments. Just a slow procession of pain, rot, and eventual infection. An infected tooth can kill you. No antibiotics, no antiseptics, no happy endings. Just a fever, some sweating, and your neighbors whispering about funeral bread. Still, you try to maintain some sense of order in your mouth. Maybe a rinse with warm ale. Maybe a little sage tucked under the tongue. Maybe you just ignore it and hope for the best. You catch your reflection in the basin of water near the door. Your teeth are there. That's something. Yellowed, uneven, but functional-ish. You make peace with that dot someone bumps your shoulder. Old Marta nodding toward the shed. Go on, she mutters. They need you with a sickle today. You nod, tucking your doubts and your gums back into your mouth, and grab your tools. But as you step outside, the breeze hits your face. Cold, brisk, and entirely unnecessary. You squint into the light. Your teeth may be failing, but your spine still mostly works dot for now. And that's good, because you're about to use it. All of it. The sun peeks through the clouds, not so much rising as cautiously observing. It offers light without warmth, like a candle flickering in the world's largest draft. You adjust your hood and trudge toward the fields. This is the part of the day where you stop being a sleepy peasant and start being a productive, back-straining, dirt-covered cog in the feudal machine. If you're among the 90% of people who live outside cities, you're a farmer by default. You don't own the land. You don't decide what's planted. You just wake, bend, dig, and hope your Lord isn't in a mood today. The fields stretch before you long, brown strips of churned soil, stubborn rocks, and yesterday's blisters. Your tools are simple. A wooden hoe, a dull sickle, a body that creaks like a haunted cupboard, and the quiet, desperate determination of someone who wants dinner. You begin by turning soil. The hoe bites into the ground, and your shoulders answer with a symphony of reluctant crunches. You dig in steady rhythm, because rhythm is easier than thought. You stop noticing the mud on your knees, the chill in your boots, the sting in your palm where yesterday's blister has become today's open rebellion. You glance to your left, your neighbor's already ahead, digging like a man possessed, probably trying to win back favor after his pig wandered into the Lord's garden last week. Again, your hands are already sore. Your back, which started the day as a polite ache, now offers a sharper commentary. You shift your stance. Doesn't help. Work continues. You sow seeds, pull weeds, haul water from the river, sloshing it carefully in wooden pails that leak just enough to make everything heavier. There's no lunch break, no snack drawer, no 2:15, and we all stretch. You eat when the overseer isn't looking. You drink weak ale when you can, and you keep your eyes down because looking tired can get you reassigned to something worse like hauling stones for road work. Children help too. Starting around 5 years old, they get their own tiny rake and a share in the scratches. There's no school, no recess, no glitter glue. Just labor and the occasional beat. If you're a woman, you do all of this and more. Childcare, spinning wool, preparing meals, fetching water, and keeping track of your husband's lice, because they're now your lice to dot. And don't forget the animals. Goats to be milked, chickens to be herded, pigs to be fed and occasionally shouted at for rooting through the compost. Again, still, you work, because if you don't eat. If you stop for too long, someone else will take your spot. And the Lord's field is always hungry for hands. You pause to wipe your forehead. It doesn't help. Sweat mingles with dirt. Dirt becomes mud. Your tunic clings to your body like a damp apology. You think about your Lord. He lives in the manor. Up the hill. He might come out today, surveying the fields like a hawk wearing velvet. He doesn't know your name. He doesn't have to. You owe him rent, labor, and seasonal gifts. In return, he doesn't let you starve. Usually, historians still debate whether peasants were truly oppressed or just stable. What no one debates, it was exhausting. The work never stopped. Even Sunday, technically, a day of rest often, turns into a day of praying for rain, patching the roof, or driving crows away with a stick. Speaking of which, you pause to wave your arms at a cluster of birds feasting on the seeds you just planted. They scatter unimpressed and wait nearby. You resume digging. Occasionally someone gets hurt, a twisted ankle, a broken rib from a falling log. There's no workers' comp, no physical therapy, just herbal salves, whispered prayers, and a week of lying on the floor while the fever decides your fate. You think of your cousin who broke his leg last autumn. The bone didn't set right. Now he limps like a pirate with no ship and works twice as hard to be half as useful. You don't want to end up like that, so you keep working. You shift the pain. You move through the ache. You become part of the field, sweating, groaning, and whispering curses to the weeds. Somewhere the church bell rings noon. You pause, not for food, but to bow your head. It's expected. The bell tolls for order, not lunch. You mumble something that sounds pious. Mostly you're just catching your breath. Then you return to your patch. The work continues. Always continues. You glance at your hands, filthy, cracked, streaked with cuts. Your nails are long gone. Your knuckles resemble ancient root vegetables. And still you dig, because in this life, in this time, surviving another day is the most ambitious career plan you can hope for. The sun has climbed, though it offers more accusation than warmth. It peers down as if to say, "You again?" And you nod, squinting into its judgment. The sky for once is clear, but you know better than to trust it, because if the work doesn't wear you down, the weather absolutely will. You pull your cloak tighter, not that it helps. The breeze cuts through it like a landlord through excuses. Your tunic clings damply to your back, and your hands are stiff, the kind of cold that creeps into the joints and settles in like a rude guest. Winter in the Middle Ages isn't charming. There's no hot chocolate, no puffy coats, no fireplaces that don't also fill your lungs with smoke. Your hut has no insulation, just wooden walls with gaps wide enough to throw a chicken through. And sometimes someone does. Glass windows? A luxury. Yours are covered with oiled cloth or maybe thin animal hide. It blocks the wind about as effectively as gossip blocks plague. You light a fire, but it's weak, small, and precious. Firewood is hard to come by. In some forests, gathering wood is actually illegal. Yes, illegal. The Lord owns the trees. Pick up the wrong stick from the wrong stump, and you might be fined, punished. Or worse, so you burn what you can find, scraps, dung, the occasional chair leg. You huddle close, singeing your knees while your back still freezes. The fire flickers like a promise it won't keep Dot at night. You pile on everything, cloak, tunic, a sack stuffed with straw. Still, you wake with frost on your eyelashes. Your toes are numb. You move them just to make sure they're still part of the team. Frostbite isn't diagnosed. It's just called bad luck. Now, fast forward. It's summer. Better? Not quite. Your home turns into an oven made of sticks and sweat. There's no breeze, no fan, no bath waiting to rescue you from your own stink. You're still wearing the same wool tunic, because fashion is what survives laundry day. And laundry day only happens when the sun, fire, water, and your will to live align. You sweat. You wipe your face. The cloth is already soaked. Your neck itches where the wool rubs. Your thighs chafe. Your boots fill with heat, and your cloak, laughably, is still required, lest someone see your arms and assume moral decline. There's no deodorant, no talcum powder, just herbs stuffed in armpits and crossed fingers. And flies. So many flies, attracted by everything. The sweat, the animals, the dead things no one's moved, yet mosquitoes hum a bedtime song at noon. You swat one off your cheek and send it into a slow arc towards someone else's misery in the fields. The sun bakes the ground until the earth cracks like a forgotten loaf of bread. You're still working, still digging, still bending over like an overcooked heat stroke. It exists. You just don't call it that. You call it fainting or a spell or the devil's sigh. You hope it passes. People collapse. Sometimes they wake up. Sometimes they don't. You try to drink more beer, but beer is heavy and warm, and it doesn't quench so much as postpone. Rain would be nice, just a little, but rain turns your hut into a swamp and your floor into soup. Then comes the mold, the mildew, the sneezing fits, the mystery rash. You itch in places you don't want to talk about. So whether it's summer or winter, spring or fall, the weather never feels like an ally. It's more like an unpredictable boss who sometimes hits you with hail for fun. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants truly feared winter more than famine or vice versa. But most agree that comfort was seasonal only in the sense that each season brought a fresh new flavor of discomfort. You pause mid-harvest, wipe the sweat from your brow, and look up. The clouds are rolling in, gray, bloated, threatening. You whisper to yourself, "Not again," because you've got laundry drying on the fence, and one tunic is already a swamp, and you were planning to sleep in that. You squint into the distance. Is that lightning? Of course it is. You sigh, adjust your hood, and bend back down into the field. Your spine pops like a warning. The wind picks up. Another medieval day, rolling forward like a wagon wheel of wet socks and sunburn. Rain begins as a whisper. Just a few gentle taps on the hood of your cloak. Then it escalates soft at first, then steady, then torrential. Within minutes, the earth turns from soil to soup, and your boots squelch like startled frogs. You trudge back toward your home, which is not, by any rational definition, waterproof. The thatch roof lets in as much water as it keeps out. You try to find a dry spot inside, but everything is damp. The walls, the floor, your soul. And now you're thirsty. Not the "I forgot my water bottle" kind of thirsty. The deep, aching, medieval kind. Which brings us to a central, unavoidable fact of this time period. Water is not your friend. That little stream behind your village, sparkling, clear, and fresh-looking. It's lying to you. It's full of things with names like fluke, parasite, and hope's end. Upstream, someone probably dumped the contents of their chamber pot, or worse, a deceased goat. In the Middle Ages. Drinking water is an act of reckless bravery. Boiling it helps, sure, but that takes firewood and patience, both rare commodities. So most people don't risk it. Instead, they drink beer all day, even kids. It's weak, yes, but safe. Brewing involves boiling, and that kills most of the invisible horrors floating in medieval water. Your morning cup, your lunch pint, your bedtime sip, it's all beer. Small beer. Slightly sour, barely fizzy, and thoroughly unsatisfying. But at least it won't dissolve your intestines from the inside out. Some people drink wine if they can afford it, which you cannot. Not unless you inherit a vineyard or marry into a miracle. Rainwater is sometimes collected in barrels, but barrels are complicated. Birds bathe in them. Insects breed in them. Moss grows on the inside like it pays rent. You drink it anyway. You try not to look or taste. Just swallow and hope. Bathing. Now there's a loaded word. You bathe. Rarely. Not because you're lazy. Because it's risky. There's a widespread belief that washing too often opens the pores and invites sickness. The dirt on your skin? It's not just filth, it's armor. Communal bathhouses exist in some towns, but they have a reputation. At first, they're for hygiene, then for socializing, then for extracurriculars. Eventually, the church notices and cracks down. Bathing becomes suspicious. So instead, you wipe down with a damp cloth. Maybe splash water on your face when no one's looking. You perfume yourself with herbs. You stuff lavender into your sleeves and pretend it's enough. The smell never fully goes away. You simply adapt. Some nobles have bathtubs, wooden barrels lined with linen, but even they bathe infrequently. You've heard of a queen who once bathed twice a year and was considered scandalously indulgent. Historians still argue how often people really bathed. The truth probably varies region to region, year to year, but the baseline is this. Water is not simple. It is sacred, suspicious, and often deadly. You need water for cooking, too. You boil it. You simmer pottage. You make ale if you're lucky and have a spare barley. You rinse vegetables you pulled from the ground and try to ignore what's already. Living on them and for cleaning clothes, it's an ordeal. Fetching buckets, heating over fire, adding soap made of ashes and animal fat, scrubbing until your arms shake, then drying everything in the sun, which appears maybe twice a week and never when scheduled. So your tunic remains dirty, your hands remain cracked. And your thirst remains complicated. Even animals are wary of the water. The family goat drinks sparingly, sniffing each bucket like it holds secrets. One of your neighbors tried a fancy new method last year, boiling water with herbs before cooling it in a sealed jug. It worked until someone dropped a frog in it. No one spoke of it again. You sit near the fire now, cupping a bowl of warm ale between your hands, watching steam rise and swirl. It smells earthy, slightly sour. You sip and feel it coat your throat like a hug made of barley and resignation. You're not sure it's hydrating you, but it's something. Outside, the rain has slowed. A light drizzle remains, like the sky is muttering to itself. You peer out the door and see puddles forming in the road, brown, untrustworthy, and faintly bubbling. Tomorrow you'll fetch more water. Tomorrow you'll boil a fresh batch. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll attempt to rinse your hair. Today, you've done enough. You sip again. A beetle crawls across your boot. You flick it gently. The rain hums. The fire crackles. And somewhere, upstream, someone tips a bucket into the stream that pretends to be clean. The fire hisses as a drip from the roof finally finds its mark, and you stare into the flickering coals with a vague, tired fondness. You're damp, but not soaked. Hungry, but not starving. Aching, but not immobile, which means it's a good time to get sick. Sickness in the Middle Ages is not a brief inconvenience. It is a chapter, a gamble, a family event often attended by neighbors, clergy, and at least one goat that refuses to leave the sickbed. And when you fall ill, the first person you call is not a doctor, because doctors are rare and expensive and often too far away. And if they do show up, they're more likely to diagnose you using astrology than actual symptoms. No. Your first stop is the local wise woman, or maybe the village barber, or the priest, or all three at once. Each will bring their own interpretation. The priest says it's a punishment from God. The herbalist says it's an imbalance of humors. The barber says you should probably be bled dot. You do not enjoy any of these options. The theory of humors is a big deal right now. Everyone's walking around with a mental checklist of bile, blood, phlegm, and black bile. If you're too sad, too much black bile. Angry must be yellow. Bile, coughing, probably excess phlegm. The solution? Adjust the balance. How? Well, that's where it gets creative. Some recommend herbal tea made from moss, nettle, or marigold. Others suggest purging forced vomiting with rancid butter or boiled bark. And then there's bloodletting dot. Ah, yes, bloodletting. You've probably seen it done in the village square. Someone pale, trembling, seated in a chair while the barber pulls out a knife and a bowl. He slices a vein in the arm, and the blood flows. People watch. Some faint. The patient hopefully feels lighter, or at least passes out from blood loss. The logic is simple. If you're sick, something bad is in your blood. Let it out, and you'll get better. Unless, of course, you don't stop bleeding. In which case, well, you won't need further treatment. Historians still debate whether bloodletting helped anyone. Most agree it probably didn't, but it stuck around for centuries because it felt like action, and sometimes that's all people wanted. If you have a fever, someone might tie onions to your feet, or rub goose fat on your chest, or have you sleep with a dead mole under your pillow. All tried. All deeply unhelpful. A toothache? That'll be fixed with a hot poker and a prayer. Or maybe you'll chew on mint and hope the pain simply gets. Bored and leaves warts? Tie a knot in a piece of string and bury it during a waning moon. Or rub the wart with a dead mouse dot. No, really. You laugh at the absurdity, then cough violently into your elbow. Your ribs ache. Your throat burns. You might be getting sick for real. Or maybe it's just the mold in the corner of the hut that's finally learned how to fight back. You sip some weak herbal brew. It tastes like bitter grass and mud with a hint of why me. It won't help, but it's warm if things get. Worse, you may be sent to the monastery infirmary. They have herbs, a little knowledge, and better handwriting. But it's a long walk, and they might not take you if they think you're contagious, which in medieval terms is anyone who sneezes too loudly dot. And if they think you're possessed, that's another path entirely. One involving chants, candles, holy water, and a very dramatic family dinner. Diseases have names, though you rarely know them. Dysentery, consumption, ague, the bloody flux. None of them sound like anything you want to meet dot. And then, of course, there's the plague dot. It hasn't come to your village yet, but you've heard whispers from the traders. Black lumps, coughing blood, people dying in the streets, whole towns emptied. The kind of illness that doesn't knock, it kicks in the door. For now, it's just a rumor, a chill under your skin that isn't caused by the wind. You sip again. The fire crackles. The goat beside you bleats softly, sensing the mood dot. You lie down, wrapping yourself in your damp cloak, and close your eyes. The room spins slightly. Your nose is stuffy. Your chest feels tight, probably just the cold, hopefully not the bad kind. Think about the leeches. and decide to just sleep it off. You wake slowly, stiff from cold, and curled in a position your body regrets instantly. Your nose is clogged. Your throat feels like someone scrubbed it with a bramble, but you're breathing. Still here. So not the plagued, probably the fires. Burned low, leaving behind little more than a few coals and a vague smell of roasted radish. Someone's already stirring the pottage, and you can hear chickens bickering with the cat. Another day, another round in the endless tournament of survival. But today brings something special. You're expected at the village church. That's not a request. It's a rhythm, like breathing or scratching. Religion isn't just part of medieval life, it is medieval life. Every thought, every fear, every cough, every pig that runs off into the woods gets filtered through faith. You pull on your cloak and limp toward the church, still coughing quietly. Your shoes squish in the morning dew, and your feet are already half mud by the time you arrive. The church stands at the center of the village, not because it's big or fancy, but because everything else was built around it. It's made of stone, cold to the touch, with a wooden door that creaks like it has secrets. The bell above tolls mournfully, as if it's personally disappointed in your lateness. Inside, it's dim. Stone walls, smoky air, and a faint scent of incense mixed with mildew. You step into the pew, really just a plank, and sit. The wooden seat is unforgiving. The draft down your neck even more so. The priest begins in Latin. You understand maybe one word in 5, and you're not sure which words those are. You bow your head anyway. Everyone does. Historians still debate how deeply peasants understood theology. What's clear is that they felt it. Every part of their lives was touched by the church from birth to death, from field work to feast days. You cross yourself, whisper a prayer, and try not to cough during the solemn bits. Religion in this world is part law, part community, and part cosmic insurance policy. You give to the church. You attend Mass. You confess, though you sometimes leave out the more embarrassing stuff. Like how you definitely definitely that egg last week. Some people wear tokens, little lead saints pinned to cloaks or strung on twine. Others keep relics, a sliver of bone, a bit of cloth, a pebble from a holy well. Not because they're valuable, because they're hope in a pocket. The priest drones on. You doze off for a moment. No one blames you. He's got the pacing of a foghorn in a swamp. But you snap awake just in time to kneel, rise, and mumble along with the chorus of amens. After Mass, you step outside into a shaft of light that almost feels warm. Children run around the yard, chasing each other with sticks. Someone hands you a heel of bread. It's dry, but you accept it like a gift from the heavens. Today is a feast day. Saint someone or other. You can't remember who, but the important part is no field work. That's a miracle in itself. Feast days don't always involve food. Most of the time, they just mean you get to rest. Maybe watch a mystery play and the square actors wearing cloaks, portraying devils with pointy hats and angels with too much eyeliner. The stories are familiar. Cain and Abel, Noah's Ark, the prodigal son. You know them all, even if the details shift depending on who's doing the yelling. You find a spot on a rock and watch the scene unfold. A man in a sheepskin robe tumbles across the stage, chased by another wielding a turnip like a sword. It's supposed to be spiritual. It's mostly hilarious. Kids laugh. A dog joins the performance uninvited. Someone throws a crust of bread, and the actors pretend it's an offering. For a few hours, things feel light. You forget about the cough, about the lice, about the pottage waiting at home. You laugh, and it feels strange, like your lungs forgot how to do it without wheezing. The play ends. Everyone claps. The priest nods solemnly. The dog barks. The bell rings again, signaling the end of the festivities. You dust off your cloak and begin the slow walk home. Faith lingers in the air like wood smoke. It's not always understood, but it's always there, woven into every season, stitched into every fear. You might not grasp the Latin. You might not always agree with the rules, but you believe in something, even if that something is just the idea that tomorrow might be better. You reach your door. The hut smells faintly of turnip and damp wool. You step inside, rub your arms, and think about the saint whose name you forgot. Maybe they're watching. Maybe not Dot, but today, at least you didn't have to dig. The door creaks shut behind you, muting the outside world to a gentle murmur of wind and distant goat complaints. You lean against the frame, letting your shoulders relax. Just for a moment. Today wasn't awful. You didn't collapse in the fields. You got a crust of bread. You even laughed once. That's basically winning. But there's no real rest. Not yet. Because the fire's low again, the pottage needs stirring, and yes, the spinning wheel glares at you from the corner. Even if you're not in the fields, your hands don't get a break. Wool doesn't spin itself. Clothes don't patch themselves. And thread in this world is as vital as bread. You sit on a stool that wobbles like it's reconsidering its career, and grab a bundle of coarse, slightly greasy wool, not dirty, just unwashed. It still smells faintly of sheep, which is comforting. If you're into that sort of thing, spinning wool into thread is both simple and strangely hypnotic. You tease it out with your fingers, pulling gently while twisting it with a spindle. The spindle spins like a lazy top, gaining momentum from habit and a touch of hope. Your fingers move automatically. It's slow, careful work. And the fibbers never quite do what you want. Sometimes they not. Sometimes they snap. Sometimes they tangle around your sleeve like they've formed a tiny labor union. Still, you spin. Because if you don't, there's no thread. And if there's no thread, there's no weaving, no patching, no selling a spool or two at the market. You glance over at the cloth you've been trying to mend for a week now. It's an old tunic with a hole in the side and a mystery stain that's probably older than your youngest sibling. You'll get to it. Eventually Dot in wealthier homes. Servants do this. In monasteries, monks chant while they work. In towns, skilled weavers earn coin. But here it's just you, your lumpy stool, and the ever-growing pile of wool that refuses to behave. If you're lucky, you've got a drop spindle. If you're really lucky, A spinning wheel, though yours is borrowed, rickety, and missing a spoke. It groans with each turn, like it remembers a better time. You hum a tune softly, a lullaby, maybe, or a harvest song. The melody wavers, off-key but familiar. Your voice isn't good, but no one's around to judge, except the chicken on the windowsill. She looks unimpressed. The thread forms slowly, unevenly, thick in places, thin in others, but it holds. It works, which in this world is more than enough. Historians still argue how much textile production was done at home versus in cottage industries. What's agreed? Thread and fabric were everywhere necessary, labor-intensive, and mostly in the hands of women. You finish one bundle and tie it off, fingers cramping slightly. You shake out your hands and flex them in the firelight. Calloused, cracked, but still useful. There's no reward for this, no applause, just the knowledge that your family won't freeze naked next winter, which honestly feels like a pretty, solid incentive. Later, someone will take that thread and turn it into something wearable. Maybe you. Maybe your sister, who always sews like the needle owes her money. Maybe you'll trade it for a few eggs or a scrap of cheese that smells like it's developing a personality. Outside, the light begins to fade. You squint through the window, clouds are rolling in again. You hope the thatch holds. You hope the mud by the door doesn't creep inside. You hope the day slows down, the air inside thickening with wood smoke and fatigue. The others return from the fields, cloaks wet and eyes dull with exhaustion. They stomp their boots, mutter about rocks and roots, and slump by the fire. You hand off the spindle and stretch. Your back pops, your hips pop, everything pops. You're practically a percussion section. A pot is stirred. A bowl is passed. Someone grumbles about the goat. Again, and in the corner, your thread dries coiled and slightly lumpy, but real, tangible. Proof that something got done today. You curl into your corner, pull the cloak tight, and close your eyes for just a moment. Not sleep, not yet. There's still evening work to come. Evening in the village is not peaceful, It is quieter, yes, but not silent. The chickens cluck themselves into awkward piles. Goats mutter in their pens. And somewhere beyond the trees, an owl argues with the night. Inside your hut, it's warmer. Barely, and people move slower, like clockwork winding down. You stretch once more and slide off your stool. It's time to prep for bed, which sounds relaxing until you remember what bed actually means. In the Middle Ages, your sleeping arrangement is not so much a bed as it is a suggestion. A pile of straw, perhaps laid out over some wooden boards or a threadbare mat. If you're lucky, there's a wool-stuffed mattress sack. If you're really lucky, it's only half full of lice. You fluff the straw with your hands. It smells vaguely of animal and old soup. You shake it out anyway, as if that'll help. The movement stirs up a few friendly bugs who flee toward the walls, offended. Your blanket is a coarse, heavy thing that used to be a curtain, or maybe a coat. It has holes. It has patches. It has a history. But it traps heat, and that's what matters. If you share your bed, which you probably do, it's cramped. You curl into each other, like medieval puzzle pieces, hoping the warmth outpaces the fleas. Sometimes there are children in the bed, sometimes parents, sometimes a cousin who talks in his sleep and once kicked you in the chin. Dreaming about apples. Personal space is a foreign concept. Warmth is king. You wash your face barely. A few dabs of rainwater from a bowl near the door. It's cold enough to make your teeth chatter. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which now has even more personality. Nighttime chores are fewer, but they linger. You bank the fire, carefully stacking embers and ash so the coals last till morning. Fire is life. Letting it go out overnight means waking up in a hut colder than a tax collector's handshake. Relighting it takes time and flint and luck. So you treat those embers like gold. Someone checks the animals, closes the gate, kicks at the pig gently to keep it from wandering too close to the hut. Again, someone else bolts the door. Not for burglars, no one in the village has enough to steal, but for wolves and drunks and wind. You crawl into bed, pulling the blanket. To your chin, the straw pokes. The wooden wall beside you creaks. A beetle scurries past your ear like it has an appointment. You breathe through your nose, still stuffy, but less than earlier. And now comes the part no one warned you about. The noises. Your neighbor snores like a disgruntled bear. The baby across the hut whimpers in her sleep. The goats, for some reason, are still awake, having what sounds like a heated discussion. A dog barks somewhere distant. It echoes down the lane like a warning. You shift your weight. The straw crackles. A flea bites your ankle. You scratch without opening your eyes. It's automatic now. The air is damp. Always damp. But tonight, at least, it isn't freezing. You listen to your own breathing. It slows. The fire murmurs. Your muscles, sore from the day's labor, ease just a little. Historians still argue whether peasants got more or less sleep than modern people. Some believe people slept in two phases. First sleep, then a few hours awake around midnight for prayer, quiet chores, or whispered conversation. And then a second sleep until dawn. You think of that, lying in the dark. How sleep might come in pieces. How rest, like everything else in this world, is rarely complete. You drift off, lightly, uneasily. Then wake hours later, unsure why. The fire's a glowworm in the corner. The air feels different charged. You hear something. A voice. No, just wind. You adjust your position. More scratching. Less comfort. Someone else stirs, mutters, shifts. You lie awake a while, thinking about nothing, everything. Whether tomorrow's pottage will taste like today's. Whether your shoes will dry. Whether the chickens will finally stop laying eggs behind the goat shed. Eventually, you fade again, back into a dream of spinning thread. And chasing pigs. Another day has passed. Another night begun. And tomorrow. Tomorrow is market day. The first sound you hear is the rooster, who seems personally offended that you're still asleep. He crows like he's trying to summon the sun with sheer volume. Then the rest of the village joins in, boots on dirt, chickens flapping doors, thudding shut. It's market day, which means Congratulations, you're going on a grand adventure to the next village over. You drag yourself upright, rubbing sleep grit from your eyes and brushing straw from your hair. You already know what you'll wear because it's the same thing you wore yesterday and the day before. And every market day since your tunic was vaguely tunic dash shaped dot breakfast is quick, usually skipped. Maybe a sip of warm ale, a scrap of bread if you're lucky. You grab your goods thread, maybe, or a few eggs, or that weird carved spoon, your uncle made and bundled them in a cloth, and off you go. The road to market is muddy, narrow, and a little threatening. It winds through hedgerows, past old trees that seem to lean in just a little too close. You pass a neighbor pushing a wheelbarrow of turnips. You nod. He nods. No one says anything. You're all too focused on not tripping into a ditch. But make no mistake, the market is the highlight of the week. Not because it's fun, because it's necessary. This is where you get your salt, your soap, your gossip. You don't go to socialize. You go to survive. By the time you arrive, the square is already bustling. Stalls line the dirt space between the church and the well. Merchants shout about onions. Chickens scurry underfoot. Children chase dogs, dogs chase pigs, and pigs chase. Freedom. You find your spot and spread your goods. Then you wait. You try not to look desperate, but you are desperate. You really need someone to buy this stringy wool. You hope someone has garlic, or maybe a chunk of bread that isn't already hosting its own civilization. You barter. A handful of turnips for a half bar of lard soap. A cracked pot for 3 leeks. A spool of thread for a needle that isn't completely cursed. No money changes. Hands. Coins are rare. Most peasants go years without seeing one. Trade is king. Haggling is normal. And lying a little? Expected. You sniff the cheese before buying. It passes the test barely, then someone bumps you hard. You turn, instinctively defensive. It's a knight. Full armor, shiny helmet on a horse too clean to be local. His banner flaps in the wind, bright and smug. People step aside without being asked. Because knights aren't just noble, they're dangerous and unpredictable. They serve lords, or kings, or themselves. Sometimes all 3. They might offer protection, or taxes, or a sermon, or a brawl. This one looks bored. He surveys the crowd like a cat in a room full of sleepy mice. His horse snorts. A goose hisses. For a second you wonder if the goose will start something. You almost root for it. Knights in the Middle Ages are romantic only in poems. In real life, they're rich, armored, and often violent. They fight wars you don't understand, collect tolls you never agreed to, and sometimes train by terrorizing. The countryside. You've heard stories. Historians still argue whether knights truly upheld a code of chivalry, or just used it as branding for occasional good behavior. This one moves on, thankfully. You exhale and return to your stall. Market day continues. Someone sings a song you vaguely recognize. A drunk tries to dance. Someone else yells about onions again. A dog steals a pie and is chased by an 8-year-old wielding a wooden ladle. Like it's a battle axe, you trade your final good, an old clay cup, for a single apple. It's soft, but it's sweet, and you eat it slowly, savoring every bite like it's a banquet. By afternoon, the square begins to empty. People gather their goods. The pigs have escaped again. A minor scuffle breaks out between two women over a cracked pitcher. The priest yells something about sin. No one listens. You start the walk home. Your feet ache. Your arms are empty, but you've got garlic and soap and half an apple core tucked in your pouch like treasure. And somehow you're still standing. The path home is longer when your legs are tired and your stomach only half believes in lunch. You move through the woods in slow, steady steps, the late afternoon sun warming your shoulders just enough to make you suspicious. It can't possibly be this kind. You pass the same bent tree with the hollow in its base, where someone once swore a fairy lived. You nod to the tree, just in case. No sense in offending the invisible dot. By the time you reach your village, the sun is drooping low, sliding toward the horizon like a sleepy orange yolk. Smoke curls from chimneys. Children shout across the lane, flinging mud as if it were a sport. Your boots squish satisfyingly through the muck. You're too tired to care, but as you step back into your hut, something feels off. The room is quieter than usual. The fire's lit, but no one speaks. There's a hush, not the peaceful kind. The kind that wraps around everything like a fog. You set down your bundle and glance at your sister. Her face is tight. Her eyes flick toward the far corner. Someone is sick, Dot. It's old Toma, your cousin, or uncle, or both. It gets fuzzy after a few generations. He lies on a pallet of rags, pale and damp, breathing like each inhale costs him something. His lips are dry. His eyes flutter when you kneel beside him. He's not the first to fall ill this season. Probably won't be the last. Someone whispers. It's just a chill. But everyone knows better. In this world, illness doesn't knock gently. It barges in, tracks mud on the floor, and sometimes takes people with it when it leaves. You help dab his forehead with a rag. It's barely wet. The water ran low this morning, and the river's been sluggish. You offer him a sip of ale. He doesn't drink, just turns his head. You sit beside him, quiet, watching. At some point, your aunt lights a candle and starts humming. A low tune, not cheerful, not sad, just old, like something borrowed from a time before language. You don't sleep much that night. No one does. Old Toma fades in and out, muttering about sheep, about rain, about someone named Annika, who none of you have met. You hold his hand for a while until he no longer holds back. In the early hours, just before the rooster announces another cursed sunrise, he slips away. There is no ceremony, no priest. Just a blanket pulled over the face, a few tears, a slow, solemn nod from your aunt, who's already thinking about what must be done next. By sunrise, you're digging. The ground is hard, damp, reluctant to yield. Everyone helps. There are no coffins, just a cloth wrap and a small wooden marker. If you can spare the wood, you say a prayer. Something simple, something that asks for peace and means it. You stand there longer than expected, not because it helps, because movement feels impossible. You didn't know Toma well, but you knew his laugh. The way he always pinched his bread into perfect circles before eating. The way he used to sing when he thought no one was listening. Now he's gone, and you return to the hut, to the chores, to the life that doesn't pause even when you wish it would. Later, someone passes around a pot of weak soup. You sip in silence. You hear a baby crying next door, a dog barking at nothing. The world insists on continuing. Historians still argue what the average medieval lifespan really was. Some say 30. Others point out that if you survived childhood, you could live into your 50s. But everyone agrees, death was close. Always. It waited behind every cough, every cut, every chilly draft. You lie down that night, tired in your bones. You think of Toma, of how he hummed sometimes, of how he told stories about horses he'd never actually ridden. The fire burns low again. You watch the shadows on the wall, and you hope that when your time comes, it's quiet, and maybe someone will. Remember how you used to laugh. Morning comes again, relentless, pale, and gray. You open your eyes to the sound of rain dripping from the edge of the thatch, slow and steady like the ticking of a water clock. Your bones feel hollow. Not from hunger, though, that's always there, but from a weariness that runs deeper than sleep can fix. Still, the world expects you. You dress, wash your face with cold water that smells faintly of moss, and step outside. The village looks the same. It always does. Mud, smoke, movement, but something's shifted. Not visibly just beneath the surface, like the feeling of pressure before a storm. Today, you're headed somewhere you rarely go, the castle. Not because you've done something wrong, not yet, but because your lord has called for labor and your name was chosen. That's how it works. You owe time. Not coin, not kindness, just time that you walk up the hill. The path winds like a bored serpent. It grows steeper, rockier. The castle looms overhead, not majestic, just large. A pile of gray stone surrounded by a wall of thicker gray stone, topped with wooden spikes. You reach the gate and are waved through without a glance. Inside, the smells hit you first. Not rot, not manure, but old wet wood, smoke, and too many people in too small a space. It's marginally cleaner than the village, and somehow less comforting. You're put to work moving barrels. Then hay, then water. Always water. You're not sure where it goes. You don't ask. That's the rule here. Do, don't speak. Nobles bustle about in wool cloaks and heavy boots, looking slightly less dirty than the rest of the world. They don't acknowledge you. They don't need to. You catch a glimpse of the lady of the house. Her hair is coiled like a pastry. Her sleeves droop like regret. Her expression is distant, vague, as if the castle is just something happening to her, too. And here's the truth no one really says aloud. Castles are miserable. Cold in winter, hot in summer, damp always. Wind whistles through the gaps in the stone like a ghost looking for company. There are rats everywhere, even in the highest towers. Especially there. The walls are decorated, sure tapestries and antlers and bits of painted wood. But it's not enough to hide the draft, or the echo, or the feeling that the entire building is constantly exhaling just to make you uncomfortable. The nobles live better than you, but not well. Their bread is whiter, their meat is warmer, their bedding is thicker, but they're not immune to sickness, or boredom, or fleas. They worry about inheritance, alliances, someone poisoning their wine with foxglove or jealousy. You, at least, only worry about surviving till Sunday dot. You carry more hay dot, someone shouts. A stable boy runs past, chased by a goose. You don't interfere. Goose-related vengeance is not your department. You're assigned to help in the kitchens next. You peel root vegetables until your fingers blister. You slice onions. You mop spills dot. Then someone calls for the taster dot. The food is nearly ready for the noble family. And before it goes to the table, someone must sample each bite, just in case. Poison, after all, is a perfectly acceptable solution to political inconvenience. The taster. As a boy of about 12, he eats a spoonful of soup, a chunk of fish, a sliver of pear. He waits. Everyone watches. He doesn't die. So it's served. You finish your shift late, hands red and wet. You're given a scrap of bread and a bowl of gruel. That's likely. Fancier than usual, there's something green in it. Possibly parsley, possibly moss. You eat it anyway. Historians still discuss whether castle life was enviable or simply a different kind of misery. One where your shoes are better, but your paranoia is worse dot as you leave. The gates creak shut behind you. The path down is slick with rain, but familiar. You walk carefully, stomach full enough to feel heavy, shoulders sore enough to feel important. Back in the village, the fire in your hut has burned low. Again, you feed it scraps of bark and whisper. Encouragement dot. Then, at last, you lie down. The straw pokes dot. The wind groans through the cracks, and you close your eyes. You breathe in, not deeply. Just enough dot. The air is cool now, damp with night. Your body is warm beneath the scratchy blanket. The fire has faded to a soft red glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. You listen dot. To the creak of wood dot. To the hush of wind against the wall dot. To the tiny, persistent rhythm of life moving on, whether you ask it to or not. Your hands ache, but less than before. Your mind spins, but slower now. The day has drained from your limbs. What remains is a kind of stillness, not peace exactly, but the closest thing you'll find here. You think of the fields, the castle, the thread you spun, the grave you helped dig. You think of all the ways people survive and all the ways they don't. And still, you're here, still breathing, still warm, still waiting for the rooster to scream you into another sunrise. But for now, not yet. Let the rain fall. Let the wind howl dot. Let the dark stretch a little longer. You are safe. You are resting. You are exactly where you need to be. Close your eyes. Let the straw cradle you. Let the fire whisper. Let the weight of the world wait until morning dot. Sleep now dot. Sleep dot. Sleep